Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the Game Week 25 pod of the FPL Wire. I'm your host, Zofa, my co host, Late Riser, and I are joined by a friend, Big Man Bucket. How's it going, buddy?
Thanks for having us off. Hello and welcome to all the listeners and viewers. Lots to ponder over. Hits flying all over the park. I think this one will be a big one for us to discuss.
What about you, LR? Love the stream you guys did midweek with Prus. Eye opening.
Thanks. Cheers. But the big story is you got your sexy face on today. I mean, is this the first time you showed up for a pod, not the last day before the deadline, with a -8 in your team? What happened there, Zoff?
Spoilers, bro. You can't be saying that right at the top. We're supposed to build into that towards as we go down. Massive spoilers. You just revealed the murderer right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, this is why people are going to hang around right until the end of the pod when you're discussing your team. So it was a marketing-focused spoiler.
Right. I just want the chat's opinion from a chat. We've done something different with the audio. We just want to hang around a couple of minutes, see if it's smooth. I'm seeing a little bit of lag on my end, but it is generally smooth. Maybe the chat can give us an idea. How was your game week, boys, otherwise?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was all right. Bruno Fernandes, some late heroics from him saved the game week for me. Saturday was really poor. I mean, Fernandes got a 12-pointer and helped me to get to 54 points. That's 4 green arrows in a row for me now, and much needed, actually. I mean, they've been marginal, but still, I mean, I can't complain. But the problem is that this week my team is in a bit of a hole, and I am, it's kind of in dire straits, and I myself am looking at like bare minimum -8, possibly even a -12. So yeah, things aren't looking great.
Nothing you're not used to, Bakar.
Right. How's the feedback from the chat? How's the feedback from the chat, guys, on the stream quality?
All good, Zoff. Let's get into the sponsor plugs and let's move on. I just so that people don't allegate me of not talking when I've had a shit week. I had an absolute shit week, but I thought it was a good week to have a bad week because I don't think nobody made much ground anyway. So that happened, and I fell from 66k to 102k. But yeah, I think I'm going to probably be on a -8 myself this week. Let's move into the sponsor plugs.
Cool. Let's go. All data you see on the FPL Wire is taken from the Fantasy Football Scout members area. The new improved members area is now up and running, and the new comparison tool lets you compare key stats for up to 3 players. Player projections are also live, and as always, you can access the custom stats table we create or make one for yourself. Sign up for membership today using our affiliate link in the description below. Right, now let's get into it. So most of you guys would have probably seen the stream that LR did with Prus a couple of days ago. So we're not going to go too much into the double game week 29 fixtures, chip strategy and stuff on that pod. With the short turnaround tomorrow, we are looking primarily at game week 25, Liverpool and Arsenal, captaincy, etc. But let's spend a couple of minutes on this. And Bakar, I want to get your views. What is your general feeling once now that the fixtures were announced for game week 29?
To be honest, Zoff, I don't think it changes much as far as this game week is concerned. I mean, regardless of the announcement, I still think we'll be in a much better position to plan the chip strategy going forward after game week 25, dependent on the FA Cup results. And I mean, truth be told, yes, as content creators, we have to look upon every game week blank and double game week announcement in detail. But I don't think there's a huge need to discuss that at this point in time, because we'll be sat here discussing chip strategy with a much better, clearer picture next week, right? Right now, so much is up in the air that I think we need to focus solely on optimizing game week 25, because I don't think there's a huge difference in the transfers of this week as a result of the announcement.
Yep. I'm in the same boat. I did watch the stream that these guys did. absorbed all of it. But the general takeaway was that to keep all options open, to keep an open mind, but to attack what's in front of you. That's pretty much my general takeaway from it.
Yeah, I think the only slight thing that I want to keep an open mind to right now, it's just an add-on thought that I've had post the stream, is there a wildcard 26 opportunity? That's something I'm probably going to look at once the FA Cup results are in front of us. Seeing, because, we went early on the wildcard last season, and going a little late, people who went a little late weren't able to gain much from that. So I just want to see if there's an opportunity. So I just want to keep that brain switched on to see what happens post.
That's a good point. I remember both you guys wildcarded. I think Bakar wildcarded quite early, right when the announcements came out on the Friday. You wildcarded around 29. I went around 33. And you guys got a lot more out of the 29, I think almost 30, 40 points on me. So yeah, you have to keep an open mind. Let's see how things shape up next week. Cool.
Yep.
Let's dive into some data on Liverpool and Arsenal. They're really the two teams that interest us because there's not much to talk about in terms of Everton and Wolves. So we had the Real Madrid game against Liverpool, and I have some touch maps now. I would say everyone not to read too much into this because it was Real Madrid, and after 25 minutes, the game state did alter things, but still worth having a look since we have that time and that data. This is Trent's touch map, very advanced as usually, created 2 chances, got quite forward despite the quality of the opposition. Gakpo dropped deep a lot, didn't get into very good attacking positions. He didn't really have a single key pass, no shots, subbed off in the 64th mark. He's been good in the previous games, but this game, he helped a lot in the build-up play, but generally struggled for direct attacking output. Nunes had an XG of 1.21 with a close chance, 2 shots on target, played a lot, drifted it centrally from out wide. Salah's touch map, again, quite impressive, getting into a lot more central areas. XG of 0.6 and 2 big chances created, as well as around 3 shots. Now we have some data up in terms of expected goal involvement. This is for the last 6 matches for Liverpool players. Nunes is on top at 3.72, Salah 2.6, and Gakpo at 2.38. So let's talk data first, and we'll talk more about the qualitative aspects. Bakar, what's your view on Liverpool's data over the last 6 matches?
It's been impressive, especially from an attacking point of view. They've been doing really well. The main takeaway in the Premier League games is that Gakpo's stats are actually better than Salah's and Nunes. When you look at the big chances, he's had 4. Salah's had 2. Darwin's had 1 actually. But I personally won't delve too much into the data because we've seen over the season that they're a very good attacking side. In fact, their XG is more or less minutes per XG is more or less similar to Arsenal. So yes, they're a great attacking side. There's no two ways about it. But the thing is that I have to take expected minutes into account, and I would give them much more value than the data. And just because of the expected minutes, I think Salah comes out as the best attacker simply by default when you take into account the expected minutes. With Jota and Firmino back, I think that Cody Gakpo will be most at risk. And so too will be Nunes, actually. But I slightly prefer Nunes over Gakpo because I think he allows for an easier move to Tony in the weeks to come. If he sort of, let's say, the Liverpool fixture is on in 28, then we might not exactly need to wildcard early. And in that case, Darwin to Tony is an easy move for us. So when you keep the structure in mind, I think Nunes is a slightly better pick than Cody Gakpo. The defense, I think Trent would be in fact, after Salah, I would rate Trent as the number 2 pick, even over Gakpo or Nunes, simply because the lack of defensive alternatives available this week. You look at Shaw, Trippier, they're not playing. No City defender is really an option at this point in time. So, even Everton have Arsenal away this week. So I think Trent by default is the best defender to own this week. And keeping in mind that Liverpool have Bournemouth in 27 as well. And then possibly there's the off chance that they have that fixture at home to Fulham in Gameweek 28. I think it's just best to load up on them.
Before we go ahead, there's one thing I want to clarify. You said Gakpo 4 times. Is it Gakpo or Gakpo? Because what I have heard in the commentary has been Gakpo.
Yeah, I'm Team Gakpo,
sure.
Man.
I'm pretty sure it's Gakpo because Gakpo is more of a Spanish thing. He's Dutch, I think. I'm pretty sure it's Gakpo. I'm sorry, but he said I couldn't get past that. Yeah, Ella, you were smiling away. There's something you wanted to say.
No, that's it. I was smiling away because of the whole Hackpo thing only. So I was like, it's
Me too.
yeah. I mean, I'm not one to laugh because I remember the whole Van Dijk gate 2 years ago, but we've come a long way after that. But what are your thoughts on Liverpool's off?
I watched them very closely last night, and I think there is definitely some sort of upturn in terms of numbers. Now, if you look at the XG numbers, are actually quite strong. They're 10.6, Arsenal is 11.7, and you discount the 0.96 that Martinelli had at the last of the game. At the end of the last game, they're still producing good quality chances, obviously not putting them away. So, but quantitative wise, I'm quite happy with what I'm seeing. But what I'm worried more is the confidence that I saw is quite fragile when they go a goal down or when the teams attack them. Liverpool have lost a bit of aura. The fear that teams had of Liverpool battering them 3-4 goals. So that could work in their favor in the sense that teams will attack them more. There'll be more space to counter as such. So in general, obviously, I still think Salah is the one to get. I am seeing some sort of improvement in his body language in terms of the areas he's getting, the shots he is taking as such. So I would still not put anyone off Salah. I think Núñez is still pretty much the chaos creator. I think Núñez has to play. He's the one who's really creating all the chances as such. But Gakpo, I'm not as convinced by still. I think because Jota is the ideal centre forward. We saw an article earlier that mentioned how he had really grown into that centre forward role. So I think their best front three would probably be Núñez on the left, Jota centre, Salah right. But what are you thinking there?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think if you're going for attackers, you shouldn't look at anyone but Salah and Darwin. Gakpo is a punt. I mean, he could play a game. He does well in that game. He flukes a goal or two, and that's about it. But you're going to look at him in 26 or 27 as a problem. And it's fine to look at him as a problem in 26 or 27 because you have Brighton midfielders as outs. So it's okay. But he's a punt, and I wouldn't go looking at Cody Gakpo right now. I was remotely interested a couple of days ago, but he didn't do too well in that first half. Once Liverpool against Madrid just played for the first 25 minutes. After that, once Madrid scored that first goal, they froze Liverpool. Like you said, yeah, they're because generally they've been low on confidence, and I agree with you that the trajectory's been upward. It's scary that if they go a goal down, they seem to fall flat. Like there isn't a resurgence of sorts which we've seen from Liverpool teams of past. That's primarily because of how defensively open they are, and that's primarily because their centre backs are just having terrible seasons. Whether it's Van Dijk, whether it's Gomez, whether it's Matip, they just don't have centre backs playing well at the moment. And that sort of trickles into the whole team. I've seen that with United in the past as well. If your centre backs aren't keeping clean sheets, if they're conceding so many chances, that sort of tends to trickle through to the entire team. So that's the whole thing. But because of the opposition that they face in 25, which is Palace and Wolves, if you're looking for clean sheet fixtures on paper, these two are probably top 5 in the league for your defenders to play against. So you'd hope that these might be the kind of games in which Liverpool have more control and probably won't go a goal down at the back, which could potentially lead to, a few points. And that's where
Should we talk about ranking assets, selling about Kane for Darwin, etc., where we are on that? I think Salah is pretty much the undisputed number one. Núñez, I saw in your thread, Bakar, you had mentioned you like Trent over Núñez. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that. What are your reasons there?
Minutes, I think.
Expected minutes,
yeah.
firstly. And secondly, I mean, a lot of us have, let's say, a Nonto or let's say if Mitrovic is fit, then, I mean, there are alternatives available. Even Felix, Watkins, I see a few people going for him. While in defense, there's barely anyone I like. So just because of that, I think I like Trent a lot.
Why do you like Trent? I'm just going to play the devil's advocate here in terms of clean sheet. They still not look that tight. I know what he said regarding the fixtures, but is it more of a case of like hope for attacking returns and clean sheet or a bonus?
Yes, it's a bit of both because as Prunel mentioned, you look at their fixtures, Crystal Palace, Wolves, and Bournemouth. All three of those teams are in the bottom 5 from wins per XG since the restart. And not just that, I mean, Trent's attacking numbers are actually quite good. He's had 7 big chances created post the restart, which is as many as he managed in the first 16 game weeks combined. So, I mean, it's it's just the ceiling you target. I mean, I'm not entirely confident they will keep clean sheets, but it's a case of just hoping that, Allison saves whatever comes in his way, and Trent flukes his way to a 12-pointer, because even if he gets like 1 12-pointer over the next 3 weeks, it's a move that is justified.
Also, what's happening, Zoff, I was talking to Alon, from FML FPL, and he made a very good point, which is very visible when you're watching Liverpool in the last 3 or 4 games, is the chunk of the chances they are creating is coming from that right-hand side triangle between Trent, Salah, and Henderson. It's back. It's what Liverpool of past used to rely on. Henderson is pressing like a monster. He's almost as a part of a front four when Liverpool are pressing from the front. I think he's got the aggressive presser role, and as Tom mentioned as well, and Bajetic and Fabinho are sitting at the back. So a lot of the chunk of the creativity is coming from that side, and because Trent has Darwin to aim at always, and Gakpo is a pretty tall guy too, I think those chances are going to come of fruition. Even if Jota comes, he's one of the best headers that we know. Even for a short guy, he tends to head the ball well. There are targets, and Trent is in a good space in terms of he just looks on it when he's all the crosses or all the balls that are coming even wide. He's sort of playing a quarterback roller when he's coming up front. They're really, really dangerous. So he looks on it. I feel like Trent is a little bit of a confidence player where you come to know where he's on it, whether he's on it and whether he's not. And he looks on it at the moment. So I expect these games to be the kind of games in which Liverpool have a chunk of control, which is why Trent just looks a good pick at the moment. And I think, when it comes to doubles, you're chasing upside. And you have to think that there's a good chance of Liverpool keeping a clean against either Palace or Wolves because of the two teams that they are facing. They're not teams known for their attacking impetus, and I think it's a risk worth taking. So I don't mind even Bucker saying that he's the second preferred because of the expected minutes. For me, I can't differentiate between Trent and Darwin, so it's all right. I don't think it's a big deal, but I think Trent is a very good pick for this double.
Yep. Talk to me about Robbo, because I know you've been considering him. A lot of people are a bit short in terms of budget. Is he a viable alternative?
So I haven't been fully sure about it, but I'll be very surprised if I don't do short to Robertson. Mainly because of the opposition that Liverpool is facing, despite their poor defensive form, there's a chance of a clean sheet. And what I've seen in the last 3 or 4 games, and make no mistake, if I had the money to go for somebody like a Trent, I would go for Trent. I don't have any route to Trent except Trippier, and I'm not selling Trippier because if Leeds beat Fulham, there's a chance I get to save the free hit chip in Gameweek 28, and that means Trips has a confirmed game in 28. So I'm just playing the numbers there. And with Robbo, because so much creation is coming from that right hand side, I've seen Robbo along with Darwin and Gakpo linger at the far post. So he has set pieces and corners from one side. I don't think his assist threat is really good, unless maybe he's running the inside channel and there is a cutback to Salah on the opposite side waiting. But there is a decent chance to fluke a goal because of the creation coming, and he tends to linger at the far post. So you could just get lucky. Like, he's not staying wide, or he's not, staying back. He is attacking because of the kind of games that I expect Wolves and Palace to be. I expect him to linger around the box, and there is a chance to fluke a goal, which is why I'm going to be chasing that upside. That's the whole thing.
Any worry about the threat of Tsimikas?
No, actually, there was a very decent discussion on the Discord today about the threat of Tsimikas. And let's face it, Liverpool are pretty much out of the Champions League unless they pull a Barcelona. You'd think that they're out of the Champions League, and which means they're going to be focusing on the league no matter what. And I do think Klopp might be thinking fourth is there for the taking, given nobody else is really in form for that fourth spot. Like, your team is faltering. Spurs are not really doing that well at the moment. They have a ton of injuries. So there is a certain belief that fourth is there for the taking, and because of the gaps there, we've seen Robbo play in much tighter schedules. But just because I think the league is going to take priority now, I'm not too worried about the Tsimikas thing.
Fair enough. I'd agree with you. What do you now think, Bucket, about selling Shaw or Trippier for one of the Liverpool defenders?
Personally, on the Robertson thing, I firmly prefer Trent over Robertson. I mean, since the restart, Trent has 7 big chances created as opposed to 3 for Robertson, and even in terms of key passes, Trent is way ahead. So, I mean, if it's a case of funds, or if it's, let's say, it's a case of 4 points plus Robertson versus Trent, then it's understandable. But I mean, since we are not exactly sure as to when we'll be wildcarding. I mean, as Pranil mentioned earlier, there's a chance we might go early in 26, 27. Who knows? Since it's just for 2 weeks, I think if it's a case of 4 points between them, then I would probably go with Robertson. But I mean, if you're picking one, then Trent has to be the pick. Coming to Shaw and Trippier, I mean, I am very set on selling Shaw ahead of Trippier. Trippier, it hasn't really crossed my mind because Newcastle have a favorable run in 27, 28, where they play Wolves, Nottingham Forest, then they have a double in 29 as well. I have a lot of value tied up in him. And let's say if it comes to me wanting to field a player in Gameweek 26, Shaw has Liverpool away. I'd expect Liverpool to score. Trippier has City away, and I'd expect City to score. But Trippier's attacking threat is better. He's created, I think, 36 key passes since the restart, and that's 20 more than any other defender. I mean, Trent is on 15 or 16. So that just explains how far and above he is of all the other defensive options there are. So, I mean, Trippier is definitely a keep if you can afford to keep him.
I'd agree with you guys. I think you try to do everything you can to keep Trippier. Shaw can be sold because, like you said, game week 28, we are expecting a blank. So it's Liverpool. The 27 fixture is good. By 29, who knows, we might wildcard or what the situation is. So if off the two, I'd definitely be more opening to selling Shaw. I don't like the idea of selling Trippier for a Liverpool defender because the 27, 28 runs is really good and there's a lot of value tied up. Transfers are precious. I wouldn't make the move necessarily for Trippier to a Liverpool defender, but I would for Shaw.
I don't even think it's a necessary move to make that short or robber move. I'm just doing it because I'm trying to put myself in a position to get lucky. But I've been 50-50 about it until today. Like, just not make that move and save the 4 points. But I just feel like the upside is 10, 15 points. The downside is 0 because Shaw isn't playing. I mean, I have to play either Bueno or Andreas otherwise. But I just think there's more to gain than lose. But if you're somebody who's got a good team in place for Game Week 29, then I'd be skeptical and are pretty much set on a free hit 28 or something like that. Then I'd be skeptical of selling Shaw because United have one of the best doubles in 29. And he's somebody you'll need for 29 as well. So that is the only thing which might give me pause. So a little bit of your own team and your own chip strategy tends to come into consideration there.
One last question now. What do you guys think about selling Kane for somebody like Nunez this week? LR, you first.
So Kane's one of the possibly going to emerge as one of the best differentials in the game just because of how ridiculously good their fixtures are in the midterm. If I'm not mistaken, I just have the fixture ticker in front of me here. They've got a game against Forest at home, Brighton at home, Bournemouth at home. They don't have a double in 29, which is a key piece of information now. I'd sell Kane for Darwin because I think there's a problem in terms of not having enough people in midfield who are fit, etc. as well. We saw Baker mention on the podcast as well that with Richarlison playing, Kane tended to drop deep. But it isn't a hard move for Kane to Darwin, but 9 out of 10 times as a manager, I would do it because I'd probably go upside chasing. That's where I am. What do you guys think? Because I think it's more important to have your perspective here as well.
I think if it enables funds for you other places, I'd be more inclined to do it. Just as a move by itself, I'm 50-50 on it because Kane just shits points. No matter what it is, who's playing in midfield or whatever the opposition is, Kane just keeps trickling along. But there is a significant price difference, right? Nunez is what, 8.7, 8.9, Kane is 11-ish. So that 3 million will be required in midfield and other places to upgrade. So if you need the money, I would make the move. Bakar, sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, I'd sell him for sure. I don't think it's a difficult decision personally because I just think there's better use of funds elsewhere when you can sort of triple up on Liverpool and use the funds elsewhere at a point where Kane isn't really a captaincy option. I think it's an easy move to make.
It only gets tricky now if Spurs go out in the FA Cup to Sheffield United. Then we would be really worried about not owning Kane come game week 28.
Then we're probably wildcarding because he's an important asset to own.
Fair enough. You could probably, because then it becomes tricky. Do you prioritize Kane? Do you prioritize Brighton players? It all gets a bit convoluted then.
The thing is, Kane's shitting points though, right? Like since restart, he's had that 16-pointer against Palace. Outside of that, this is what Harry Kane has done: 7, 2, 2, 5, 6, 8, 2, 5. So it's a very slow trickle, not an explosive performance. You know what I'm saying? So he's had one great 45 minutes, and that's in concurrence with just generally how good Spurs have been. So it's because of how dysfunctional and how off their optimal level Spurs look, which is why I'd be like, all right, it's fine. He's not explosive. He's had that 116 point in 45 minutes. 45 minutes. Outside of that, he's trickled along. That's about it.
Fair enough. Should we move on to Arsenal and then we'll discuss captaincy?
Sounds good.
Quick Arsenal numbers over here. XG non-penalty for Eddie Nketiah, 5.24. The highest across any player in the league over the last 6 matches. You have Martinelli, who's second with 1.57, but that's inflated by his 0.99 XG chance against Villa. Odegaard, 1.33. And this number really stood out to me when I made this table. 1.08 non-penalty XG for Saka from 18 shots in the box. Just one big chance, but that's pretty much an average of close to 0.05, 0.06 per shot. So not very good chances. He's been outperforming his XG massively. Do you think that is going to continue? Bakar?
Yes.
Bakar, I want your perspective in terms of stats and what you see on the eye test with Saka.
With Saka or Nketiah?
Let's do both. Why not? Start with Nketiah first.
Nketiah, I think there's a haul and I'm waiting to happen. Honestly, every time I even watch him play, I think, yes, he's been missing chances, but it's nice that he's getting in promising positions. And I'm not that worried about him. I think there's a explosion likely to happen at some point soon. Saka's been slightly overperforming in recent times. Again, I mean, I'm not entirely sure about captaining him. We'll come to the captaincy discussion later. I think he's a good player to have. I would possibly, let's say, if I had, if I didn't own Saka, I would definitely try and bring him over someone like an Odegaard. I still prefer Saka. Or if you can get to 3 Arsenal attackers, which we'll discuss later when we come to Zoff's team. I think Saka is a good transfer this week if you don't own him. But again, I'm not entirely confident on captaining him this week, simply because I still think Salah is a more explosive asset.
Pranil, where are you on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think Arsenal are good for 5 to 6 goals in this double, just because of the opposition that they're facing. And my lack of confidence in Saka as a captaincy asset, because of the numbers that you mentioned, it must be said that he's become a high volume shooter, which is something Hibbo pointed out in his outstanding article for Scout as well. He is shooting a lot more, and I think that comes from specific instructions from Arteta. And we've discussed this. The money game is the Leicester game. Like, the Leicester game could be 3-4 goals. You know what scared me and what is playing on my mind is Arsenal got 4.3 XG or 4.2 XG versus Villa. Let's say 0.9 out of that is that Martinelli chance. Still 3 plus XG. They were very, very attacking. They should have had 3, 4, 5 goals in that game against Villa. And the Leicester game, because of how open they were against United as well, it's a possibility of, because of how good and well and how functional Arsenal are, that game could be a bloodbath. But I don't know. We've seen all season long where they tend to sort of share the points amongst all your Arsenal attackers, which is why that confidence that you need to have in Saka as a captaincy option, because he hasn't been an explosive pick. He's been a great, consistent pick. But like, you just have more Salah, right? If you're talking about captaincy, but that's where I am with the captaincy debate. I think I've seen a lot of people consider selling Nectar or something, and it blew my mind. I think if there's an Arsenal attacker to have this week, it's Nectar, because he's just so due. Unless a miracle happens and Arteta tells us tomorrow that Gabriel Jesus is ready or very close to returning, Nectar is an underrated, for people chasing rank who are very behind. I'd put the armband on Nectar right now, because his ceiling is very, very high. And I was talking to a few Arsenal fans. It's not like he's got the highest delta negative XG since the restart. But historically speaking, he's somebody who's on pace with his underlying numbers, with his XG numbers. Necktie, when he was a kid or when he was coming through the ranks, he was known to be a good finisher. And also what I've seen with Necktie is that he's sort of an average or not a great finisher with his head. All the chances, if you remember him missing, except for that one chance where he could have just put Saka through instead of shooting above, they were all chances on his head. I, in fact, do believe in him as an asset and as a finisher when the ball is at his feet. So I think he's just a very high upside pick. I think everybody has 3 Arsenal. And unless you're doing some sort of restructuring to shift maybe a defender to an attacker this week, stick with who you have. Even Martinelli, for example, people were talking about Martinelli, and if they still own a Martinelli, I think Martinelli is going to be playing the Leicester game for sure, because that game just suits the skill sets that Martinelli offers. And what might happen, because Coleman did a really good job against Martinelli in the away game against Everton, I think it's performance dependent. If Martinelli has a really good game against Leicester, I think he plays Everton because of just how Arteta functions as a manager. Otherwise, Trossard might get a shoe in that Everton game because of how Everton play.
I definitely hold on to Martinelli this time. It's not as like the last double where we thought that Martinelli's minutes might be as much at risk. I'm quite confident now he does start both. Where are you, Bakar, on Martinelli?
Again, if you can, let's say, go from Martinelli to Saka for a hit, I'd do it.
Absolutely.
I'm not as confident as you guys are because, it just seems like one bad performance away from getting dropped. And I'm not as sure as you guys are that he's going to start this week. I mean, I would expect him to, but I mean, in a double game week against Leicester and Everton, I would want the best 3 attackers. And as we've discussed so many times earlier, Martinelli is simply not the best 3 Arsenal assets. So, I mean, unless we hear any concrete news, I would sell him to someone like a Saka if possible, if you don't have Saka already.
I do like the upgrade to Saka. That definitely does make sense. But let's talk about now again in terms of moving, I think Pranil, you mentioned moving a defender to an attacker. Do you think that is a viable move this week? Especially you sort of taking the pain this week rather, right? Because the 2 fixtures, especially the Leicester one, I do expect Arsenal to concede. It feels like a 3-4 goals game. Do you think it's worth taking hit to do that surgery now with a view to getting the second attacker in long term? The third attacker rather.
But the long-term attackers are in midfield. And Ketia, because people have problems with me calling him Necktie in the chat, isn't a long-term attacker. But then you have an out in Brighton and Chelsea and Brentford later on with the doubles coming as well. So it's okay for it to be a short-term move as well. But I think in your case, it sort of enables a restructuring that you want as well. But I just stick with who I have. That's all. That's where I am. I think whatever worry we had of Ben White also has slightly disappeared for me, because I thought he had a really good game. I thought both White and Nketiah should have had a return each at least in that game against Villa because of how they played. So I'm not too bothered about moving the Arsenal pieces as long as you have your captain in your head there.
That's fair enough. I think the ranking will be pretty common for all 3 of us in terms of the attackers. Yeah. Saka, Odegaard, Necktie.
I still think Nketiah is better than Odegaard.
Yeah.
Short term maybe, but probably yeah.
Yeah. I think if you can get in Necktie this week, get in Necktie because there's a 20-pointer in there.
Anything further to talk about on Arsenal, or we'll just now analyze their opponents a little bit for both the teams?
Yeah, I think we need to get into the captaincy discussion because that's the main discussion too. Before we get into the captaincy discussion, just let's talk Wolves and Everton punts. I think all 3 of us think Tarkowski is a good pick. What do you guys? I think Bakar, you mentioned McNeil, if I'm not mistaken, as a punt. What are your thoughts there?
My thoughts are that, I mean, I'm looking for a budget neighbor this week, and it's between an Everton and Wolves midfielder, and I do think McNeil is possibly the best of the bunch that I can go for because he's on set pieces from Everton, and as we know, he's a huge set plays are a huge part of how Everton play these days, and he's created 3 big chances since Dice has taken over. So yeah, I mean, I think Everton will win against Aston Villa. In fact, Villa's defensive numbers, I know their opponents have been tough in recent times, but their defensive numbers are actually terrible. Them and Leicester are among the bottom 3 teams for XG over the past 4 matches. So I expect plenty of goals for Arsenal, and 2 or 3 goals for even Everton this week.
Yep.
So I'm just thinking about it. Emery's transformation into this sexy manager is very concurrent with your transformation as an FPL manager who's sitting on a -8. I mean, it just makes sense. Like Emery used to be like rigid, boring games, does the right thing, etc. as well. And then it's what we've seen from him post the restart is just that I don't have any sort of memory of Emery to be this manager. I mean, the Villa games are crazy. The scoring, conceding for fun. What's happening there?
Yeah, he's not happy about it. They've gone up in their last 2 home games and then shipped 4 goals after. He mentioned that in the post-match.
Yeah, it was hilarious, that match of the day interview where he's talking about it's the last time it's happening. It's not going to happen again.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much how I feel about my -8 as well.
I mean, coming to hits in general, I mean, I don't think there's a huge problem with taking hits this week. I mean, a lot of us will be doing it. You know, people need to realize that this is a one-off occurrence where there's a blank game week and a double game week, and it's a rarity, right? So we're selling players like, let's say, Shaw, Bruno, Almiron, Mitrovic, Botman. These guys are going to get zero points, and we're getting in double game week players. Even the Liverpool players, let's say even the likes of Darwin or Gakpo, who are at risk of rotation, they're going to get like 120 minutes, right? So 120 minutes is enough. You're getting 3 or 4 points as a floor, and that's without taking any attacking returns into account. And I just think those transfers are just very safe. So it's okay. And you should look at, it's not as if you shouldn't look at hits like you're doing a -4 mindset. You should look at each hit in isolation. And if you think that they justify themselves, then you can take as many hits as you want. That's fine. And I think it's a very pertinent discussion to have this week.
I just think there's just one exception to this rule. If you've already used your wild card, or if you're set on not using a chip in Game Week 29 and you're selling your United assets, then I think, because I do think that we are sort of rolling the dice on a Liverpool team that hasn't shown much faith, and we are chasing that upside. But if somebody, for example, doesn't believe in Liverpool and are, fielding 11 players, etc., and not taking big hits, I wouldn't say you're doing the wrong thing because you don't have faith. And it's a very subjective thing based on your opinion as a football fan in terms of how this team is going to do. But I get that it's not a very convincing thing to do. That's all.
Yep. So the only thing I would say is a lot of times you bring in players this week and then you might not want them the next few weeks, like somebody like McNeil. But I guess, Bakar, you'll be moving him on for a Brighton mid anyway, right? The next week.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's going to go for one of the Brighton mids in 26 or 27. So easy transfer.
Yeah, and they have Forest also in 26, which is not too bad. So you can even hold on for a week if there are injuries elsewhere. So I don't mind that punt at all.
Yeah, I don't either. I think it's a decent punt. Just want to, I've still said Sarabia as somebody who's in the market for a 1 week punt. I've just got a feeling about him. I've been mentioning this 3 weeks in a row. He's not done anything yet, but he's saving it for the double. We have Metro news from the press conference. This is the exact quote. It looks like it'll be difficult for him to be ready. He was on the pitch outside doing some specific work. Tomorrow, we are going to take a decision. That's where we are with Metro news at the moment. I think we might see some more sales coming from Mitrovic now.
Yep. It is the first kickoff, so we might get some news. But there was a training video they posted yesterday. And although Mitro was right there at the start of it, he wasn't participating in team training later. And I think the FA Cup tie now is a sort of big game for them against Leeds. And now Leeds do have a new manager in place. So that might be a tougher tie than what I thought it would be a week or so ago. So they might target that one instead, I think. It makes more sense. Just some now data.
And Fulham in general, just by the way, have played a very weakened team throughout their FA Cup campaign. That's one of the reasons I'm a little confident about how Leeds do in that FA Cup game as well, because Fulham are seeming to not prioritize the cup.
Yep.
Second stream team every time in the cup.
Yep. And now as we get closer and closer to the further stages, I think that will change though.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Some data now up here for teams in attack, XG non-penalty. We should mention Brighton, 13.47 XG non-penalty of the last 6 matches. That's over an average of 2. 25 big chances, just 2 fewer than Man City. Brighton's numbers are crazy. A lot to talk about next week because there's been a lot of changes in terms of tactics, positioning with Estupiñán and March McAllister. But let's put that aside for now. Arsenal are at 11.7 with Liverpool at 10.6. So only 1.1 difference with that Martinelli. You'd subtract that out. More or less same in terms of attack. Not that much. There's 14 big chances for Arsenal, 15 for Liverpool. So in terms of team attack, there's not really much to split them, I guess. But when I watch Arsenal, they look like a much more functional team currently than Liverpool do. The confidence is then what we cannot really ignore is the feel-good factor that comes from winning a game in the 95th minute. The momentum is definitely there with Arsenal, I think, more so than Liverpool. Would you guys agree?
And helps that City drops 2 points after that.
Precisely. So they can smell blood.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, but Liverpool also have the motivation now that they're out of the Champions League, so they can definitely go for that fourth spot. It's all they have to play for now, really.
Yeah.
Quick look now in terms of defenses. Like you mentioned, Leicester are right at the bottom, 13.70 non-penalty XG conceded. Palace at 9.49, Wolves 9.05, Everton 9.42, but their data has to be read with a pinch of salt, right? Because half of it is under lamps.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of a breakdown which I'll cite right now because I was looking at game by game XGC, and I wanted to contextualize this further because I do think that the decision for captaincy between a Liverpool and an Arsenal attacker is that close. Now let's talk about Wolves. On an average, they're conceding about 1 to 1.5 XGC against teams, but they conceded 2.8 XGC against City. They conceded 1.8 XGC against Liverpool, and they conceded 2 XG against United and 2.1 XG against Arsenal. So on an average, they're conceding 2 to 2.5 XG against the good teams. Now, in my head, I always had a perception that Wolves is a team that isn't going to be blown away because I rate Lopetegui as a manager as well. But they are conceding 2 to 2.5 XG. Two good teams, and it's a game at Anfield. So there is a potential for a 3-0 sort of game there or 3-1 sort of game there. So that's one factor I wanted to talk about. Leicester, they conceded 4.1 XG to United, and they're capable of, being taken apart, especially against a team like Arsenal. But outside of that, they're conceding like 1.2, 1.7 XG, especially at home. Their XGC is decent, 1.2, 1.7, 1.7, always under 2 at home. So that's the thing. The third one now is Palace. Palace conceded 2.5 XG to Brighton. They conceded at home. They conceded 2 XG to United away. At home to United, they conceded 2.1 XG. So again, they're a team that against good teams are conceding 2 XG. Worth pointing out though that Anderson is back in that team. And last week against Brentford, they were really good. They conceded just 0.7 XG. And then there's Everton. 3 games under Daesh. But the home games against Arsenal and Leeds, they conceded 0.5 and 0.9 XG. But away to Liverpool, they did concede 2.2 XG. And there's a good point that Alon and Walsh made on the FML FPL pod as well, where they spoke about how Daesh, when he's 1-0 down, he doesn't believe in then consolidating that result and, stick with it and maybe try to see off the game 1-0 or 2-0. His plan B is to go for it. And they were like, if you remember Burnley of past, there were games in which, we remember City always winning 4-0 final. I remember some other thrashings as well. So while they were good against every team that was 7th or below, the sort of reliable there, they did have a tendency to take a hammering from big teams in general. So that game, that Arsenal home game to Everton, might just be game state dependent. So these were sort of the factors where my conclusion is that the Palace and Wolves game aren't as bad as I perceived them to be for goals, but I see more goals in the Arsenal games.
Fixtures wise, I do think the fixtures look better for Arsenal. Bakar, where are you in terms of numbers? Have you been able to identify a clear split purely based on numbers analysis?
It's very close because, as Pranil pointed out, it's not as if Palace and Wolves, their numbers have been good in recent times. They're struggling in terms of keeping on containing containing chances in recent times. So for me, it purely comes, and as we mentioned, there's not much between the Liverpool attack and the Arsenal attack. So it comes purely down to the player attacking threat. And, despite the fact that Saka has looked really good in recent times, Salah in terms of XGI, non-penalty XGI per 90 has been outscoring outstatting Saka over the season and even post the restart. And I tend to often, when we have to take 50-50 decisions, I tend to look at bookmakers' odds, and Salah is rated as having a better chance of scoring or assisting anytime in both of those fixtures, actually, which just makes him a slightly safer choice. And there's also the fact that I think, in terms of overall rank, I think Saka will be more captain just because how poor Liverpool have been. But among the more engaged FPL managers, I think Salah will be more popular. So I think there is a bigger chance to gain ground if Salah comes off, because I don't think his ownership will be as high as Saka's. So I'll go for Salah just because of that reason.
Crazy, right? We are saying that Salah is a differential captain in her double game week. You told me this 1 year ago, and I really wouldn't know what to say. It's incredible.
Where are you at with the captaincy thoughts, Joseph?
I
I think
mentioned this.
Bucker's made up his mind. I
Yeah,
haven't made up my mind. But
my
where are you?
head does say Saka, but my heart, is always with Salah. And there is the sort of thing that it's Salah, and I'm trying to get out of my head and trying to look at it more objectively. There's a great video that Tifo did, that Baker directed to, I watched before the pod, that talks about the different tactics and the way Liverpool have now sort of evolved with Nunes and Jota in the team, where Salah isn't getting into as many central positions. But what's happening now, his creativity numbers have gone up significantly. So there's another weapon added to his arsenal in terms of big chances created, which in turn helps him with his bonus, which has been sort of his weak point we've seen over the last few years. So, and I saw something against Madrid. There's one chance where he took on the defenders rather than pass. So he just narrowly missed the goal. So there is certain up in body language and stuff like that. And this sounds completely random. They're due a penalty. No, there's no relation to that, but
they're due. But they're due, man. They're so due.
So there is penalty duties over there. So I'd always do like my captain to have penalties. So it's between these two guys for me. I'm not considering Nketiah as much. But as it stands, I'm on Salah.
Yeah. Same. As it stands, I'm on Salah because of the reasons you mentioned. Francis Logan in the chat, shout out to him, brought this up. He's like, Saka keeps getting kicked more than the ball and could get injured. And that scares me. Like every time I'm watching Arsenal, it scares me that Saka could fall. And remember that Arteta video that went viral? You just don't know, right? That I don't want to jinx anything, so I'm not going to say anything. But Salah generally does minutes well. That's all. So, and as much as I want to captain Nketiah, you have two good midfielders who are captaincy options, who get one extra point for a goal and who get one extra point for a clean sheet as well. These margins do matter and are worth considering. And it plays on your mind, right? If you've seen a striker, and we're the kind of podcast that does believe in form, that has been missing their chances in the last 2 or 3 games as much as he's due, that does make you a little bit hesitant. That's why at the moment I'm on Salah, but come Friday deadline, it could be Saka, Salah, or Nketiah. These are the 3 I'm considering at the moment. But if the deadline is in 15 minutes, if there's a deadline, it's going to move Salah.
There's some interesting images I want to share with the zonal weaknesses from Fantasypedia. I think they further strengthen the case on Salah. Let's just have a quick look before we move on to our teams. Now, these are Liverpool's opponents, Palace and Wolves, and both of them concede majority of their chances down the left side. Oh, sorry, their left. Yeah, so basically on Salah's side. So the matchups as such zonally are good. There's this whole thing where they might employ Nouri to shut down Salah. So let's see what happens there.
But what you like about these matchups is that if they're weak from that side, they're kind of just generally good for Liverpool also, because right now they're creating the chunk of their chances from that right-hand side triangle that we spoke about earlier, which is Salah, Trent, and Henderson. So it just generally bodes well for the team that, this map is showing us that they tend to concede more chances from that side, which is Liverpool's strength.
Yep. Bit of confirmation bias there. Because I don't, because ultimately, teams might set up differently. A manager might target to put double team Salah and stuff like that, which might throw all this out of the window. But in terms of data, there is something to consider here.
Yeah, agreed.
We look at Arsenal over here. Now, Leicester is actually on the opposite side. They're much more weaker down Martinelli's flank. And Everton in general concede a lot of crosses from out wide, which is natural, right? They encourage teams to cross, and when you have the big centre backs who can head away the ball, that's pretty much standard Daesh game plan.
Yep. What do you guys have to say for somebody who wants to captain Nunes? Would you put him or her off that?
Oh, you have to have a very, very high tolerance for pain to go through that, I would say, because he can be one of the most frustrating players to own in the league, but he can be very rewarding. But you have to be able
Yeah.
to cope with that. That's all I can say mentally.
Yeah, that's right.
And I wouldn't put you off. The fact is he scored 2 and 2. So, the confidence is there. He's got a smell of the back of the goal. And I do think now that the league is going to be prioritized, I don't think we're going to see 60-minute subs now for Nunes. I think I put his expected minutes at closer to 150 than 120 now.
Yeah,
because of the way the league is going to shape and where Liverpool's priorities are going to change. So I wouldn't put anybody off it.
Yeah. And even though he's playing on the left wing, he's drifting inside a lot. He's pretty much playing as a striker. The left wing is pretty much just a way to drag the defenders down on side. Every opportunity, he's the one coming inside more so than Salah. A lot of times I noticed that Salah is the one maintaining the width with Nunes coming in inside. So I wouldn't let his positioning on the left wing put me off at all. He is pretty much still their striker.
And he's got a high ceiling because he's fairly creative as well. He does find the last pass as well. There's a chance to get an assist, which amps up your potential to get a haul as well.
Cool. Should we move on to our teams?
Cool. Yes, before we move on to the teams, we haven't done it. We've got about 1,000 people watching the live stream. We've just got about 160 likes. Take a second and just, click the like button. We're doing as much as we can to get quality content across to you guys. And, all we expect from you is click the like button and just hit the subscribe button, because you supporting the channel helps us, makes us feel good. So we'll be grateful.
Right. And as always, you can join our Discord by becoming a member on YouTube or Patreon. Right. Let's bring up our teams. Right. The big reveal, my -8. So I had exactly 0.0 wiggle room on these moves. I made this after the Man City game once we confirmed that Haaland wasn't injured. Hopefully, we might get some news still. So what I have done is I have shipped Mitrovic, De Bruyne, Fernandes, and White for Darwin, Odegaard, Saka, and Alexander-Arnold. And strangely enough, it's the most confident I feel about a -8. Famous last words going into it, because I do feel like, if you build up a free hit team for this week, these would probably be the 4 players I would bring in first up on that sheet. Would you agree?
Yep.
Absolutely.
So I was fortunate I had 0.0 exact cash. And when you have that, you sort of feel it's meant to be, right? Just click the buttons and hope for the best.
Yep. And I do want to make the point, about Liverpool. The thing is, if you're attacking this week, you're potentially also attacking 28 and potentially saving yourself a chip. I think that's a point that shouldn't be disregarded. That's all.
Yep. The only worry is now I'm a little bit tight in terms of funds, in terms of Brighton mids, but I'm not too concerned about that, because the picture for that becomes quite clearer by 27 in terms of blanks, etc. You can decide which guys I want to ship out. So I do think there are points there in the short term to be gained with these guys.
Agreed. Let's say Guardiola tells us tomorrow that De Bruyne is fit. Would you still make the De Bruyne to Salah move?
Let's talk about that a little bit. I don't think De Bruyne has been a great FPL asset. I've held him now for the majority of 25 weeks. I've held him, I think, possibly for 17, 18 weeks this season. He did get that goal against Arsenal, but with the rotation risk now thrown in, the assist potential, I do like Salah as an asset more.
I thought he looked good in that game against Forest. I thought he was very unlucky to not be amongst the points. He does. So I don't think it's a straightforward decision.
I don't think it is.
Let's say if somebody was set on Saka or Nketiah as I'm just going to stick to Nektai. Or Nektai as captaincy option, I'd maybe pause to make that move. But if it was me, I'd make the move irrespective. Just chase the upside. That's it. Don't expose yourself to a Salah 20-pointer.
That's what I agree. I'll just read it to the entire team out really quick for the audio, guys. It's Kepa, Patterson, Trent, Tarkowski, Andreas, Saka, Odegaard, Salah cap, Darwin, Haaland, and Nketiah. I'm not expecting anything from Patterson, maybe a sub on in 2 games. That's about it.
Little jealous of seeing Shaw on your bench, though. You're going to hold him for 29. I think that might be a difference in terms of strategy difference in 29 or something of that sort.
Yeah, I was trying. I
don't like selling.
Rashford, Shaw, and Trippier, all 3 perfectly good assets, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if you guys keep a clean sheet away to you, Liverpool as well. United's form is
Yeah.
absolutely elite. It pains me to say it so much, but it is what it is.
Yep. Excited for the game tonight.
Yeah, I actually might stay up to watch it as well. Should be a good game.
Yeah.
Right. This is now, I think, Bakar, your team.
Yeah. So for our audio listeners, I have Kepa in goal, White, Shaw, Ake, Fernandez, Andres. I've got Salah in for Bruno as my Salah in for De Bruyne as my first free transfer. Other than that, I have Saka, Mitrovic, Nketiah, and Haaland. Salah will be my captain this week. I'm almost certain about it. In terms of other transfers, I think I'll have to sell Mitrovic for Darwin and Shaw for Trent. There are two moves I'm very certain about, which means that I will have to downgrade Bruno to someone below 6.1, which will either be McNeil or Sarabia. I'm not 100% sure on this decision, and I'll probably leave it till tomorrow to decide. But as of now, I'm on McNeil. And the other decision I have to make it is whether I take an additional hit, which would then take me to -12, to sell Ake for Tarkowski. Because if Laporte is fit, he's been reportedly unwell over the past week. But if he's fine, then I'll have to sell Ake because I won't expect him to play. But if Laporte is still ill, then I would keep Ake, as that would give me a chance against Bournemouth.
Just want to mention, Bakar, even if Laporte is fit, Ake isn't guaranteed to be benched.
Yeah, I'd risk Ake against his old club. There's a bit of old club thing happening over there. I'd stick with it because Villa are good in attacks. You could see Everton conceding in both games. It's more if you want Tarkowski for a longer term. That's the only reason.
I mean, it's a tricky one, because if Ake doesn't play, or if he comes on for like a 1-pointer, then let's say it's a 4-point hit, then you're looking for 5 points from Tarkowski to make up the hit. You'd expect him to get 3 points as the floor, right?
That's true.
So it's
and you want Ake gone long term as well, right? You don't want Ake in your squad also longer term, because effectively what I'm saying, he's your fourth defender.
Yes.
It's a bit
that's what I was going to come to. That's what I was going to come to, guys, because let's say Laporte is fit. In that case, would you sell Patterson or would you sell Ake?
You can afford Tarkowski for either, right?
Yes.
Patterson
probably.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because that's another decision that I might have to make.
Patterson isn't getting his spot back anytime soon. Dyche likes his old days.
Okay, but that's the thing, right? If I sell Ake, I can sort of free up funds. Let's say if I might need them in the future.
Not significant funds, right? What Tarko is about 4.4 now, I think. Ake is 5.
Yeah, but like,
you get like 1.6. It's not like you're freeing up 2 million.
No, but the difference between Ake and Patterson is 1.1 million, right?
That's true.
That's significant. That's significant.
Fair enough. Yeah, you have to see what it does later down the line in terms of allowing you money, because most likely you will want to replace Andreas with the Brighton mid. You won't want to get rid of anyone else, so you have to keep money for that in mind.
Yes, it's a tricky call.
I think McNeil and Sarabia is quite easy. Don't even look at Sarabia. I think McNeil is a decent shout, because if you do have injuries in 26 and 27, don't think about it.
Yeah. Fair. And also, I mean, let's say you hold on to Dwight McNeil through some magical thing right until 28th. There's an extra game in 28 confirmed also.
Exactly. And Chelsea are very weak at set pieces.
My point is, let's say if the Liverpool versus Fulham game is going ahead in 28th, then there's every chance that I don't actually have to end up preheating. But in that case, I will want to have Andreas, won't I? Yeah. Because I mean, it's a tricky call either way. I mean, let's see. I'll decide tomorrow as to what I do. But yes, as of now, I'm leaning towards McNeil, and I'm actually hoping that Laporte is slightly ill, so that he's ruled out for this week, and that would give me an opportunity to hold on to Ake, because I do think that City have been unlucky to concede so many goals in recent weeks. I mean, their defensive numbers have been good, and this is like one of the easiest fixtures for a clean sheet this week, so I'm very confident.
Yeah. I'd hold Ake regardless. I think where I am in terms of like Laporte or whatever, I'd give Ake a go this week.
Interesting.
The old club thing always plays on my mind a little bit. Pranal,
That's fair enough.
Right. I've got Kepa in goal. I've got White, Tarkowski, and Bueno in defense. In midfield, I've got Salah, who currently has the armband, Saka, Mahrez, and Andreas. And up front, I have Haaland, Darwin, and Nketiah. I've already made 3 moves this week for a -4. I've done Mitro, KDB, and Doherty to Tarkowski, Salah, and Darwin. And currently, I have 11 if you count Bueno and Andreas, but I might make an additional hit for Shaw to Robertson. I don't really need to do that because I have 11 playing, but it's just chasing that potential 20 pointer that Robertson could have in his locker. And if that happens, I have a sort of benching dilemma between Bueno and Andreas. The thing is, yeah, you're scared because Andreas is on pens if Mitro isn't playing, and we'll probably have that news tomorrow. But Fulham just aren't functional without a striker in their team. So that's the reverse thing in my head. And I'm hoping we get some Bueno news. If we don't get any news at all, I think I'm leaning towards playing Bueno over Andreas. What do you guys think? Who would you play if I make the... Would you make the move for Robertson, Pucker? I've had a chat with Zoff about this. Would you?
Yes, I would.
Yeah. And if that is the case, who would you bench between the two?
Between
Bueno and Andreas.
I would bench Bueno for sure. Yeah, because if Mitrovic is out, Andreas is on penalties.
Fulham are at home.
Is that what you...
I'd agree with Fulham are at home and they're always good for a few goals at home. I think Silva mentioned that we didn't function well without Mitrovic. It was his mistake that he played a false 9 over there. So I think he is going to try. He'd probably play Vinicius there.
Yeah.
Go back to a
But the thing that Fulham are good for a good few goals hasn't been the case for the last 5-6 weeks. There has been a slight down.
They've changed the system a little bit. They are more conservative now as such. And
teams have realized that Fulham are a very attacking team. So teams are also setting up differently against a team like Fulham. They're giving them the respect they deserve. So it's both things that are happening.
If you had a Kilman or a Dawson, I would say it's a bit of a no-brainer. But you might not even get starts for Bueno. That's the tricky bit, right?
I think one start looks good to me because my personal opinion is he's the better player compared to Ait Nouri. And when he's on the pitch, he actually looks good for an assist. So that's the upside thinking with starting him.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Cool. I want to take a few questions.
Let's do a quick Q&A, a 5-minute Q&A, definitely. Let's do it.
Sounds good. Tom North has asked if Robbo is guaranteed to start every game. We spoke about it. We think Liverpool have only the league to fight for now, which is why we think his minutes are going to be fine. Vincent Gichero is asking the question. His rank is 2.6 million. He would love a differential captain. Who should he give the armband to between Odegaard, Nectar, and Darwin? What do you think, Zoff?
Nketiah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think 2. So 2. If you're feeling Darwin, also do it, but don't give it to Odegaard if you're in the mood for a differential captain. Just think the other two have a higher ceiling. Christopher Icon has sent us a super chat. Hey guys, he's bringing in Salah and Nonto for Kane and Almiron. Can't decide Tarkowski for Bueno or Trent in for Shaw. He'd have a full 11.
Trent in for Shaw.
I agree. No second thoughts in my head either. Yeah, I think all of us are on the same page. If you can afford Shaw to Trent for a -4, all three of us are leaning towards doing it. It's a roll of the dice, but it's a fun roll of the dice. Trent looks good. Rajan Maheshwari has asked this question, I think, for the 12th time in this chat today. He's already done KDB to Salah. Haaland, Kane, Patterson, and Martinelli out. Darwin, Trent, and Saka for a -8. Yeah, I like that -8. Don't sell Haaland, though. Sell Kane.
Yeah, don't sell Haaland.
He's selling Kane, Patterson, and Martinelli for Darwin, Trent, and Saka for a -8. Yeah, do it.
There was someone on Discord also considering selling Haaland. I do not like that because 26, he's the captain again, right? I get home to Newcastle.
Just keep Haaland. Don't consider selling him. Mehul Sony, my friend from school. Hey, what's up? How's it going, man? He's asked a question. Is getting McNeil in for a -12 worth it, or just play Bueno in a back four and stick to -8? I don't think it's worth a additional -4.
No, I don't think it is. You play Bueno.
Stick. Yeah.
One more super. Lots of questions coming in today. Yogesh Rupani has asked a question. Gives White, Tony, and Doherty out. Andreas, Darwin, and Taco in.
Andreas, Taco, and who?
Tony out is tricky. I mean, would you sell Tony if you had him this week? I mean,
who's coming in for the striker spot? Darwin?
Darwin, Andreas, and Tarkowski are
See,
in
Tony
for
is
Gibbs, White,
interesting
Tony, and
because
Doherty.
tell me something. If Tony is on 9 yellow cards come game week 27, would you still buy him?
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Probably, yes.
I wouldn't because you have to keep in mind it's
I
a
would
2-game
bet on him.
suspension, right? Let's say he gets that suspension in the first game of 27. He's going to likely miss then the first game of 29 as well. And you
Yes,
won't
so,
captain
but
him.
it's
You won't captain him then also.
Yeah.
If it's because
now my counter argument was going to be that there was something similar with Mitrovic in game week 19, was it game week 20, and we ended up captaining Mitrovic. Even like there was this risk that he would get a one match ban if he got a yellow card, and he did, but we still bought him in. If sometimes you have to take the
but
chance.
Then there was only Fulham with the double. Now what happens over here? Brighton will also have the double. You're going to captain the Brighton guy if Tony has that risk. If Tony has on 9 yellow cards, I won't be buying him. I'll just load up on Brighton and captain one of their guys instead.
Yes, but would you sell Tony if you had him this week?
Yes,
more of a tricky call.
I would for Darwin, and assess that in 27.
Cool. We have a question from Ryan. Ake to Tar, Kane to Darwin, Eddie Cap, 2.8 million rank. Yeah, you have my stamp of approval. Go for it.
Go for it.
Attack, man. You have to. Like, you're in game week 25. Need to start making ground. Abu Manu CFC's asked a question. If I have played a wildcard, how should I proceed? He has a team similar to me.
You should go for 3 from Liverpool, 3 from Arsenal, probably 2 from Everton, and have 2 or 3 combined.
He's already played a wildcard and he's got a team similar to mine.
Already I think stick to your Arsenal this week. Already played.
Yeah, already played.
Okay.
I think it's still all right to get a Liverpool player or 2. Because you're hedging your bets for a 28 and it might enable you to not use a free hit chip. So don't sell really good assets, but get in Salah. Maybe get not both, but one of Trent or Darwin, whoever you fancy more, and sell in bad players. That's it. Take it easy. Don't worry about it too much because the way 29 is shaped up, I think you can tread along 29 without worrying about things too much. That's all.
Correct. Most of the players will have doubles in your team already.
Yep. One more super chat from Sumrit Chabra. Okay, guys, I think should we tell them to not send more super?
No more super chats. We'd wrap up soon.
Zoff, this one's for you. Felix to Darwin for a -4.
Yes.
Ooh. Bucker, what do you say there? I don't know.
Yes, I think probably yes, because there's a good chance that, let's say, if Tony does avoid another yellow in 1 or 2 weeks, you'd probably move Felix on for him anyway. So why not just do the transfer right now?
It's a probably no for me. I just rate Felix and Chelsea. I think
we know
I saw signs.
We know that.
I saw signs in that last 30 minutes. I thought you all were great. I thought it was a good thing that Potter realized that the Fofana experiment is a fail. And when Kai, Sterling, and Felix played together, I thought you all were really good.
Yeah, but the upside is there definitely this week. I don't like the fixture away to Spurs much.
Yeah. Generally, you all tend to do well against Spurs, though, right? Like that's been the norm.
We do, and James from Planet FPL thinks we're going to pretty much set up the way that the midfield not to supply Kane, shut down the midfield as such. But confidence is low right now. If we lose to Spurs and let's say we lose to Dortmund as well, Potter's position becomes very dicey.
Yeah, but I think it's been a lot of bad luck. I think you all are top 2 or top 3 for negative delta XG. You just haven't finished those chances. I mean. And it's not even about finishing, right? It's like a little voodoo thing that's happening. The Sterling shot that was cleared off the line.
Yeah. Bit of voodoo, bit of confidence.
Yeah. Cool. That's it from us. A much longer pod than Okay, one last super chat. Guys, no more questions. This is the last one that we're taking. He's planning to bring in Tarkowski and Darwin for Kane for a -8. And he still has only 10 outfield players. It's fine.
Do it.
Playing 10 outfield
and it's okay if you have 10.
Week. Yeah.
It's fine. Don't worry about not having one player. It's all right.
Let's wrap up.
All right. Thank you, guys. And we will see you next week. We have a little bit of a break next week, right? Because of the FA Cup games.
FA Cup is midweek. The FA Cup fixtures are midweek.
Next weekend's. So we'll probably be doing a Thursday pod.
Yep.
Probably.
To get the FA Cup games out of the way.
Exactly. All right. Good luck, guys. And just believe in your own convictions and see you next week. Take care, boys. Any last words?
Good luck. Good luck, guys.
Good luck and see you next week.